everybody and welcome to this video on functions. In this video, we have a look at what is the domain and range. So the domain of a function is the set for which the function is defined. What does that mean in simple English? It's the x values that the function takes. The range of a function is all the values that it takes. So here, the range is associated with the y values. So the domain is a set of values for which the function is defined, and the range is the value for which the function is, all the values that it takes. So let us have an example, have a look at an example. So over here we have a straight line graph, but at the ends it is got an excluded end over there and an included end over there. So let's first look at the domain. So the domain is the x values. So we usually start with the smallest x value. So here the smallest x value that it takes, we can see is associated with this dot over here, and it is -3. Because it is excluded, so open dots mean excluded, it will get a round bracket. Looking at the biggest x values, so it will take all of these x values over here, and biggest one that it takes is 2. And the 2 value is included, so we put a square bracket. Another way of writing it is as an inequality, so x is greater than -3 or greater or equal to 2. It really depends which notation you would like to use. Let's have a look at the range. So the range, y is an element. What is the smallest y value that it takes? It is -5, and the -5 is included. And what is the biggest value that it takes? If we have a look at the y value, it is 4. And again, the 4 is excluded, so it gets a round bracket. Again, you could write it as y is greater or equal to -5 or less than 4. Note how the round bracket corresponds with strict inequalities, or the point not being included, and the square bracket corresponds to cases where that point is included. So have a look at this example and make sure that you understand how do we get the domain and range. So looking at the next one, we're going to start with the x values, so the domain. So the domain, so this x value is taken, for example, this x value, that one, there's an x value, that's an x value. And this arrow is indicating that it would go on and on and on, and this arrow is also on and on and on. So our smallest x value it takes is -infinity. So because it would, if you imagine it going on forever, the smallest one would be -infinity, and similarly, the biggest value is infinity. Another way to write this is x is an element of real numbers. So the function is defined for all real numbers of x. Let's have a look at the range. So the range is the y values that the function takes. So for example, there's this y value, there's this y value, and also the y values are also going towards that infinity direction. But we have a look here, there's this y value, and below this y value, there's nothing. So this function is an example which has a minimum. So y is an element from the minimum, which is the y value of this coordinate, which is 4, and it's included because the graph actually takes that value. And the biggest y value is infinity. So that is the range. Let us have a look at another example. So for this one over here, the x values it takes, you can see, is everything. The smallest x value is -infinity, and the biggest one is infinity, so it's defined for all x values. You could also write x as an element of real numbers. Remember, infinity plus and minus infinity always get round brackets, and your range is y is an element. And once again, can you see below this asymptote, there's nothing. So it starts at the asymptote, and the asymptote is not included. because it won't ever touch the asymptote and will go right up until infinity. I hope you've understood this video. If you haven't, please watch it again, and please pay attention to each one of the functions. What is the domain and range when we look at functions in detail later?